Hey, welcome. So I'm back from a prolonged staycation here in Copenhagen, and today's topic is something that I'm super excited about. So before we get started, you're probably wondering what I'm wearing. So I have another passion besides street photography, believe it or not, and that is to drink coffee. So this is my drink coffee outfit, and I'll be right back. All right, that's better. So I'm super excited about today's topic. So the next chapter of my street photography journey. And this year, 2024, has already been full of surprises, great progress, and so much fun doing street photography. And I would say bringing joy and fun back to my street photography has something that I've been longing for the past couple of years. If you've been following my channel, this might not be a surprise because I've talked about film photography here and there. I also mentioned my desire to buy a film camera. It's been on my wish list for the longest time. And as I mentioned, if you've been following my channel, you probably know that I bought a Leica M6 back in May of this year. So it's been a very long decision process for me to venture into film photography. And also, the fact that buying a Leica is such an expensive camera, and also it's a film camera, so there's a lot of associated costs with it. So basically the cost of the film itself, the different film stocks and development and scanning. So that's why I hesitated and I paused my decision for the longest time, I think for the better part of 3 years. But finally, I took the plunge this year and I couldn't be happier. So in this vlog today, I like to talk about my decision to venture into film street photography, buying a Leica M6, and why I'm super excited about this next chapter of my street photography journey. All right, let's get into it. Before we get started, I just quickly want to introduce myself if you're new to the channel. So my name is Embreen, aka Hipster in Copenhagen. I'm a street photographer and I've been taking street photos for the last 8 years and counting. So I talk about street photography on this channel. I have a website where I also have a newsletter and a blog. So I would say I am very much into street photography. Some might call it obsessed with it. So do check it out and let's get back to the video. I like to start off by talking about my decision process. So basically what led me to buy the Leica M6, a film camera here in 2024. It actually started with the Leica Q2 because I got a little bit interested in that camera a couple years ago. And I did some initial research and I ended up in the flagship store here in Copenhagen. To be honest, I wasn't that impressed. And also an important thing was that I wasn't used to a fixed focal length camera. And it was a 28mm, and that focal length was just not something I wanted because back then I was shooting a lot with the longer focal lengths like the 55 or the 85 or even longer than that. So buying a extremely expensive camera with a fixed focal length and a focal length that I wasn't really comfortable with, I went out of that store thinking, I don't want a Leica Q2 no matter what people are saying. And even though it's hailed as a good street photographer's camera, I actually firmly parked it on the back burner, so I actually forgot about Leica for a while. But since then, I've organically come to love candid street photography or classic street photography. It's so funny how things can just flip upside down just over a few years. So I went from just really loving the longer focal lengths, so basically the 55 and 85 and even longer. Those were my safe space focal lengths, to really enjoying using the wider focal length like the 28. And I also talk about this on my other blog episodes. You can check them out as well. And all that change, really getting into candid street photography, came in the summer of 2023, where I bought my Fuji X100V. And one of the main reasons I bought that camera was because of its film simulations, because my reasoning was that I wanted to get into film photography, and the closest I could get was using the film simulations because it was a more affordable and cheaper way for me to try out if film photography really was something I was really wanting to get into. So that was one of the reasons I bought that camera. And the other reason that I didn't account for was that I had to go back to the 35mm focal length, a focal length I haven't used in many, many years, even though I actually started out practicing street photography on that focal length exclusively for many, many years. After that, I really never got back to 35mm because, as I mentioned, I was really loving the longer focal lengths. So I had to go back to the 35mm equivalent on the Fuji X100V and start all over again. And along the way, I was also practicing, getting closer to my subjects, really enjoying candid street photography, and I was experimenting a lot with that type of photography, because that was really something I hadn't tried that much either. So that also naturally led me to buy a 28mm focal length. So basically it was a 28mm converter lens for my Fuji X100V. And that really kind of kicked off everything, and the rest is history. So why Leica M6 and not any other film camera? So actually I did a lot of research and I looked into everything from old SLR cameras to the cheaper point and shoot cameras of the 90s. And I had a long list that turned into a short list. And to be honest, when I was doing my research, it was quite overwhelming because there are so many film cameras out there. And just the sheer researching every camera and figuring out if that is something I needed was very overwhelming. And eventually I gave in and I just wanted a Leica because that is something I wanted for a long time. So from that point on, it was just a matter of which Leica camera I wanted. Let's talk about my current street photography setup. So I bought the Leica M6, which is this camera. They also have the MP and MA. So we have 3 film cameras in the Leica lineup. And I bought this Leica M6. It's purely based on how it looks and how it feels in my hands. I remember going to the store last year and I saw all of the cameras laid out on the counter, and I was so drawn to this camera, and it just felt like the perfect camera because I love how it looks. I love the red logo. I love, everything that is flashy, and, it just suits my personality so well. And the MP and MA are slightly different. I think the MP is a brass construction. It was also a little bit heavier, even though this one was more expensive than the 2 others. So there are small differences between the 3 cameras. Essentially, it just comes down to what are you drawn to, what you like most. And for me, there was no doubt when I went back this year to look at it, I was just, this is going to be this camera. My Leica M6, I paired it with the Voigtlander Ultron F2 28mm focal length. That has been the easiest decision that I've made. I had no doubt at all that I wanted the 28mm. So basically coming off the Fuji X100V and playing with the 35 and eventually 28 that I got obsessed with, and the photographs that I could make, I had no doubt in my mind that I wanted to pair my Leica M6 with a 28mm. So for me, this is the ultimate street photography setup. The next chapter, and why I'm so excited, I believe venturing into film photography is the natural progression of my street photography journey. It feels a bit like coming home because I'm old enough to remember the good old film days. There's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of good memories, a lot of family pictures. So when I open a family album, there's a lot of good memories there, and I want that feeling again. I want that nostalgic feeling of, what you can get with film photography. So for me, it feels like going back to my roots. And the second thing I'm super excited about is actually becoming a beginner street photographer all over again. In a sense, I have to relearn street photography, and I'm super excited getting to know my camera as well, going out with a different mindset, because I believe shooting film is a little bit different than digital. At least this is my experience so far. And there are a lot of things I do as a street photographer with my digital cameras that are just a habit that I have to relearn and do differently with the film camera. And also the fact that I have to get to know my camera and handling the camera. For me, it's very important to have the right chemistry with the camera. I made a whole video about it. You can check it out as well. And so I'm looking forward to all aspects of it. Try to find a new process. So basically the way I think about street photography, the way I do street photography is also essentially different than digital photography. So I'm super excited about all that and then some. When I bought my Fuji X100V back in the summer of 2023, I had a lot of mixed feelings about it, and I talked about it in a few videos as well. I really regretted my decision because I felt like it wasn't the camera for me, and I didn't fully appreciate what I could do with that camera. But since I've used it for over a year now, I really come to love that camera. And also, looking back now, it had a profound impact on my street photography and the journey that I've been on. And that eventually led me to buying the Leica M6 now and venturing into the next chapter. With the Leica M6, the experience has been completely different than the Fuji X100V that I just described. So I haven't had 1 ounce of disappointment or regret since I bought the camera. It feels completely the right choice for me to buy this camera at this moment in 2024, and also considering where I am in my street photography journey. I'd like to share a few things that I experienced using this camera for a month and a half. So first and foremost, I just simply love using this camera and go out and make photographs. And I feel like it's a more slowed down process for me as well. So I'm not in a rush when I go out with my Leica, and I think it's a more deliberate process. So when I'm taking a photograph, I take things slow, maybe a bit slower than I'm used to. And I feel confident and I feel curious when I'm out on the streets. And I also feel like I have a lot of mental clarity because I'm not always rushing around. Other things that I really appreciate with this camera is that the wait time, so to get my photographs back from development and the whole scanning process. So I ventured into new territories as well. I do home scanning, and I also bulk load my film. So there's a couple of new things that I've learned also along the way. Last but not least, I also love the simplistic approach of the Leica rangefinders. I also really love the manual focus lens. I love the zone focus. So altogether, I think there's a lot of aspects to it. So for me, it feels like a completely different experience. And as I said, it feels like I'm relearning street photography all over again. A lot of exciting things for me as a street photographer and my street photography journey. So getting into film photography will undoubtedly also affect this channel. I will be sharing a bit more film street photography related content, but don't worry, I won't become an obnoxious film photographer. The aim of this channel is still the same, to talk about street photography and why we love it. So I consider myself a hybrid shooter that sometimes shoots film and sometimes digital. Best of both worlds. I'll hope you follow along on my exciting new next chapter. All right, I'll see you on the next one.